Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. You know how we're always talking about seeing things from different perspectives? Well, this time we're going to look at the world through the eyes of a child. And let me tell you, it's really amazing what we can learn from them.
It is fascinating, isn't it? I mean, we often think of children's views as being sort of simplistic and straightforward,
Right.
but the truth is their perspective is incredibly insightful. And
Yeah, and it can teach us a lot about ourselves and the world around us.
exactly. And one of the key things that really sets children apart is their incredible openness to new experiences. They just approach things with this amazing sense of wonder and curiosity.
Yeah, like a blank canvas, right?
Exactly, like a blank canvas.
Yeah.
They haven't yet developed all of the preconceived notions and biases that we adults tend to accumulate over the years. And this allows them to see the world with a freshness and a clarity that we often lose as we get older.
I think that's so true. You know, the other day I was walking through the park and I saw this little girl. She must have been like 4 or 5 years old. And she was completely captivated by a little ladybug crawling on a leaf.
Oh,
And I just thought to myself, when is the last time I stopped to really appreciate something like that?
hmm.
You know, as adults, we're always rushing around, so focused on our to-do lists and our deadlines.
Yeah.
We forget to slow down and notice the simple beauty that's all around us.
That's a perfect example of what we're talking about, really. Children are so present in the moment. They're not burdened by all of the worries and anxieties that we carry around with us as adults.
Yeah.
So they're able to experience joy and wonder in things that we might just pass by without a second thought.
And that really ties into their lack of preconceived notions, right?
Absolutely. They haven't yet developed those mental shortcuts and categories that we use to make sense of the world.
Yeah.
And while those shortcuts can be useful in some ways, they can also limit our thinking and prevent us from seeing things in new ways.
I remember reading about a study where they showed a group of children and a group of adults a series of optical illusions.
Oh, interesting.
And the children were much more likely to see the illusions for what they were. Because they weren't bound by the same expectations and assumptions as the adults, they were able to see the images with fresh eyes and perceive the trickery involved.
That's a great point. I think it highlights how our experiences can shape our perception. You know, as we grow up, we learn to categorize things, to put them into neat little boxes.
Right.
And this helps us navigate the world more efficiently, but it can also lead to rigidity in our thinking.
And a reluctance to question things or consider alternative viewpoints, maybe.
Exactly. And children, they're not afraid to challenge the status quo. They ask why.
Hmm.
Constantly. They're constantly testing boundaries and experimenting with different ways of doing
Oh,
things.
yeah, that why stage. Every parent knows that one.
Right, exactly. And as frustrating as it can be sometimes, I think there's a real beauty in it. It's a reflection of their innate curiosity and their desire to understand the world around them.
It's like their brains are wired for exploration and discovery.
Exactly. And that's something that we can definitely learn from. As adults, we can get so caught up in the routine of daily life that we forget to ask questions, to be curious, to explore new ideas.
It's like we lose that sense of playfulness, that willingness to experiment and try new things without fear of failure.
Exactly. And play is so important for children's development. It's how they learn about the world, how they develop social skills, how they cultivate their creativity and imagination.
It's not just about having fun, it's about learning and growing.
Exactly. And, I think we as adults could benefit from incorporating a little bit more play into our lives as well.
You know, that actually reminds me of something I read about how children are so much more in tune with their senses than adults are.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like, they really experience the world through their senses. Everything is so new and exciting to them. They'll touch everything, they'll smell everything, they'll taste everything, and they're really present in those sensory experiences.
And I think that's why they're often so much more appreciative of the simple things in life. A blade of grass or a colorful pebble can be a source of endless fascination for a child.
So true. You know, it's like we learn to filter out a lot of that sensory information as we get older. We become desensitized to the world around us, and I think that's a real shame.
Absolutely. We lose touch with that sense of awe and wonder.
Yeah. But you know what else is interesting about children's perception?
What's that?
They're not as bogged down by abstract concepts as adults are. They tend to see things in a more concrete, literal way.
That's a really important point. They haven't yet developed the same capacity for abstract thought that we have as adults.
Right. So, for example, if you try to explain something like justice or democracy to a young child, they might not really understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, those are complex concepts that require a certain level of cognitive development to grasp.
Exactly. But I think there's also a certain beauty in that simplicity.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they're not overthinking things or getting caught up in the nuances, they can sometimes see solutions to problems that we adults would miss.
Exactly. They're not limited by the same mental constraints.
Right. So, for example, if you give a child a puzzle to solve, they might approach it in a completely unconventional way and find a solution that you never would have thought of.
Because their thinking is more flexible, more creative.
Exactly. So I think the big question here is, what can we learn from all of this? How can we as adults tap into that childlike way of seeing the world?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I think it starts with being more mindful, more present in the moment, paying attention to our senses, noticing the small details that we often overlook.
And allowing ourselves to be curious, to ask questions, to explore new ideas without fear of judgment.
Exactly. And I think it also involves letting go of some of our preconceived notions and biases, being open to different perspectives.
So basically, we need to rediscover our inner child.
In a way, yes, it's about reconnecting with that sense of wonder and playfulness that we all had as children.
And I think that's something that can benefit us in all areas of our lives.
Absolutely. It can make us more creative, more resilient, more joyful.
So here's a challenge for everyone listening. How can you bring a little bit more of that childlike perception into your life this week?
What small change can you make to see the world with fresh eyes and rediscover that sense of wonder?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
And we hope it encourages you to embrace the power of childlike perception in your own life.
Until next time, keep exploring.
And keep wondering.